I talk pretty loud, so my daughter's out there. She'll say I don't need a microphone.
So Angela, would you tell us a little bit about how you became so fond of knowing more about and being involved in the community of diabetes?
Well,
I mean, yes.
Well, I'm 40 plus some years, but not much over 40, I'll just say that. And very strong family history of diabetes in my family. North Carolina, way deep in the South, both grandparents with diabetes. I'm one of 45 first cousins, fraternal side, and over 23 of us have diabetes. Kidney transplants, pancreas transplants on my side of the family. So it became very prevalent to me at a very young age, being told by my grandfather, who was a minister, and watching my grandmother make meals at noontime for the hired help, that I was to watch her to make sure that if she sat down, she didn't fall asleep and not get up. And I thought that was a pretty easy job at 6 to do, but I didn't realize that meant that possibly she was hypoglycemic and I needed to run and get somebody. So in knowing that information later on, I knew I had a very strong possibility to get diabetes for myself. And my very first pregnancy in 1992, with my daughter Brianna, who's out in the audience now, I was told I had gestational diabetes. So I had diabetes in pregnancy, and at that point, I had been a nurse for a while, and I said I'm going to go back to school.
Now, let me ask you something. I heard as a young woman that most times diabetes skip a generation. Is that myth or is that true?
That's definitely a myth.
It is?
It's definitely a myth.
Okay.
It does not necessarily mean that it could happen. It's a possibility it could happen, but it's definitely not a guarantee. So I wouldn't bank on that one if I were you. If you're African American, if you are a woman who had a child over the size of 9 pounds, that means you're at risk. If you are and we've all had pretty big babies, you know, because that was always said that, you know, big, happy, fat babies were good, but actually that gives that child a risk for diabetes in your lifetime. High cholesterol, if you are of Asian descent, Hispanic, there's always those other risk factors to consider. So my mother had diabetes, my grandmother had diabetes, my father has diabetes. So it didn't skip anybody but my sisters and brothers, I guess.
Can a person who comes from a family of diabetes that has a terrific health regimen still end up with diabetes?
It's always possible. When I talk to my clients and we give them they come to me with the diagnosis of diabetes. Very seldom do I get to diagnose somebody because I'm in a specialty clinic where you're coming because usually your primary care doctor has decided that your diabetes is out of control and they're sending you to a specialist. Or they're looking for new regimens of treatment for their clients, so they send them to us at that point. So I have some people who have felt like their diabetes has been reversed because they're not on any medication. Maybe they've had surgery, such as gastric bypass or lap banding, where they've lost an enormous amount of weight and they have not taking anything anymore. Once you have the diagnosis of diabetes, you stay with the diagnosis of diabetes. The only thing that changes is how you care for it. It may be just diet and exercise and no medications, which would be great.
Now, there's how many different types?
Well, classically, 90% of Americans have type 2 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes comes from insulin resistance. It comes from when your pancreas at some point decides that it's not going to give you enough insulin for that food that you're about to eat. Okay, so the majority of people in the world, especially African Americans, have type 2 diabetes. And looking out in the audience now, I see a lot of young people, and believe it or not, I have a son now who's at the Yale Obesity Clinic because type 2 has always been told as old times as adult diabetes. It is now prevalent in age 7, 6, 8 years old who are overweight, whose parents or grandparents have had diabetes. Those children now have type 2 and not considered juvenile type 1. Now, type 1 is when you absolutely have no insulin production at all or very little from your pancreas. And we used to call that juvenile diabetes. That is called type 1. And those people have to have insulin all the time. They literally, if they miss their insulin injection, they can end up in the hospital with what they call DKA, which is diabetes ketoacidosis, and it's very life-threatening to those people. So that's another kind of diabetes. And then gestational, which was what I had, which is diabetes during pregnancy. And if anybody's remember, women out northeast who drank that cola, that liquid sweet drink that I can still remember the taste 17 years later, that was determined whether or not your pancreas was going to release enough insulin to take care of that high sugar drink. And so that's a type. But 92–93% of women actually convert back to normal afterwards. It's that small percentage of women who are just diagnosed during pregnancy, and then they convert either to type 2 or they were type 2 all along. In my particular case, I was gestational, free of diabetes for a while, and then I converted to type 2.
Okay, I'm going through my normal day, my normal routine, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. All of a sudden I start not feeling well. What are the symptoms?
Some of the early symptoms of what we call the 3 polys. Polyuria, which is increased urination. Polydipsia is when you have increased thirst. You're just thirsty all the time. And not like, maybe you take some medicine, you feel like you got to drink. I mean, literally drinking 32 ounces in one sitting. And then 10 minutes later, you have that cotton mouth again. That's increased thirst. Polyphagia, which is increased hunger, which can be similar to some other things, but hunger to the point where you never seem like you're satisfied. And most people who are early diagnosed with diabetes actually lose weight, you don't gain weight. And the reason for that, and I'm talking about unexplained weight loss. For some reason you're still eating, you're maybe doing your same regimen, maybe you're not exercising, you never seem to lose weight. All of a sudden you've lost 10 or 12 pounds, unexplainable. And you're drinking a lot, and you're urinating a lot, and you're eating more than you've ever eaten before, but you keep losing weight. And the reason is called glucosuria. All the sugar that you take in your body, instead of holding on to it, your body has to get rid of it because your blood sugar is so high, and you urinate it out. And that's why you actually lose weight.
Okay, well, we're going to take a break for a Black History moment. And where's our Black History people? Are you out there anywhere? Okay. Jackie Ray. And then we're going to add a little music to it. When we come back, I'm going to ask you some more questions. Thank you.
In the beginning, why does that sound so familiar? Colored people were worshiping at the First Baptist Church, all white, in Bridgeport during the 1880s, during the middle 1880s. In the late 1880s, several colored churches were established in the state of Connecticut. Some were prayer boards meeting from house to house. Many others were started by colored people who were allowed to sit in the balcony or make use of First Baptist in a separate service. So began the origin of Messiah Baptist Church. Many of the colored members, no doubt desiring to sit every man under his own vine, own fig tree, decided to establish their own church, now known as the Messiah Baptist Church, with the blessings of the First Baptist Church of Bridgeport.
And that was the NBC Black History Moment. Jimmy, I have a little surprise for our group of people today. Anybody here read their books? Did you get your book for 40 Days of Fasting? Did you know there was a little blurb in there that we're supposed to give our bodies at least 10 minutes of exercise every day. Just do something to move our bodies. Jimmy's going to play something. We're going to move our bodies. Would you join me? All right, Jimmy. Come on. Come on, come on, come on. Now the trick is, if you don't move good, I'm gonna let it play forever. But if you get it on, I have Jimmy cut it for you in a second or two. What do you think, Jimmy?